Welcome to Around the Bend with Silky. In this video, we're going to talk about a hidden gem, Zion National Park, Part 2. We're Mike and Ramona, and we're leaving from the middle of downtown Springville, outside of Zion National Park. This parking spot is kind of a really nice place that you can pull into and expect to find a parking place in the middle of Zion. We talked about it before in part 1, but just to reiterate, this is one of the most scenic camp parking spots we've ever been in. It's reserved for the general store, and if you spend $20, ice cream, souvenirs, pretty much anything will get you $20. You can park right next to shuttle stop number 3. The shuttle just went by, and it makes it an easy access to Zion National Park. This was a pretty warm day. We actually did some hiking in the park, but not very much. It was pretty close to 90 or above. And when you get into these gorges, it's pretty hot. So this is about early afternoon, and we decided to head back towards the campground. But as you'll see, we found a distraction. The scenery coming in and out of Zion is pretty spectacular, but not as good as it was going to get once we found the hidden gem that I'm going to show you. A little bit further down the road is a place called Rockville. It's a small town and it's built right into the rocks. There are boulders bigger than houses kind of perched behind them. And I would be afraid that during an earthquake or something, it would come down and actually roll over the house. Be sure to notice the rocks and the rock formations on the right, especially as we get closer to leaving town. This is actually Route 9 that we're traveling on. It goes from Washington and comes all the way up through into Springville and into Zion National Park. So about 22 miles back from the entrance to Zion, we found a road. We spotted this road sign that said the Kolob Reservoir was 25 miles up the road. 25 miles doesn't sound like much, so we thought we'd give it a try. It starts in the small town of Virgin on Route 9 and then heads up in following North Creek, another tributary of the Virgin River. The start of the route is along a lush valley with plenty of green woodlands and well-watered farm pastures. Quite a contrast from the faded red cliffs on either side. Then after a drive of about 10 minutes up this road, it begins to climb quite steeply, and at one point it traverses a very narrow ridge with good views. Goes through BLM land, and there are places to camp all up through here. So there's fine areas to camp on the southeast side of the road, shortly before the national park boundary. A rough network of sandy tracks winding between trees and cacti offer many sheltered stopping places. It's pretty obvious that in this area the road floods. If it rains upstream, a lot of mud is going to cover this area. It might be worth keeping track of if you're up in here. There are several settlements up in here. The Kolob Terrace Ranchland is one of those. There's a couple more as we go. And you get further up, there's actually some glamping and some pretty interesting tents. So we call this a hidden gem because it is a long, scenic route heading north through the middle of Zion National Park. We did not realize that when we turned on. It climbs steadily to Lava Point. It's a forested viewpoint at 7,890 feet. Along the way are overlooks and trailheads for such popular destinations as the Subway and the West Rim. Kolob Reservoir Road, also known as Kolob Terrace Road, is the least traveled of the main roads through Zion National Park. It provides an easy way to quickly reach the wilderness and escape the crowds that can affect the more well-known areas of the park. It offers great views of distant cliffs and valleys, hiking trails to high overlooks and along narrow canyons, and varied landscapes reflecting the wide elevation range from 3,550 feet to 7,090. The road passes close to Lava Point, the highest summit in the park, except for two peaks in the far northwest region, and affords exceptional, near 360-degree views of the whole park. Under Canvas is off here on the left, and it's a casual resort for glamping with permanent tents. As I mentioned, we were surprised when we saw the sign that said we were driving back into the park. There is no entrance station back into the park, just a sign. But 1 3/4 miles inside the boundary, a lay-by on east side marks the restarting point for one of the most famous trails in Zion. The route on the left, the Fork of North Creek, also known as Great West Canyon. This flows through a wild canyon that becomes a more narrow and scenic upstream water source, culminating in the subway, where the creek becomes enclosed in a circular passage, almost like a tunnel. Shortly before the trailhead is a much smaller parking space for hikes up the right fork, almost as scenic. Lamb's Knoll for climbing is on the left, and an area for BLM camping. Another retreat high up in the canyon. You'll notice the road changes color. It passes outside the park again for a while, crossing the lower Kolob Plateau, which is used for cattle grazing and horse meetings. And indeed, much of the traffic to this point is for livestock transportation. The road re-enters Zion, following a sharp turn east, and ascends even more steeply through alternating meadows and woodlands, all very pretty, with frequent glimpses of remote mountains and canyons. And the road changes color again, back into the park. And also they have construction road signs for painting the lines on the road, of all places. A few miles back inside the park, after passing a pair of ancient cinder cones on either side, the Fire Pit Knoll and the Spendlove Knoll, the road crosses Pine Spring Wash, which upstream flows over open land for a while, then emerges from the narrow end of a canyon. There is no trail, but it's easy enough to walk beside the creek bed. Also slick rock slopes, then into the canyon, which is not quite a slot, though respectably deep and enclosed. Part of the wash, and after another steep ascent, the road becomes narrower and flattens out at around 7,000 feet, by which point the landscape is very different from the desert-like conditions of the Virgin River Valley at the start. Thick pine forests and wide clearing, shallow ponds felled by melting snow, which may not clear completely until June. Yeah, why 25 miles an hour? And you can barely see that sign back there in the trees. Oh, maybe this 5-mile-an-hour hairpin turn has something to do with it. The views here are awesome, just don't miss the road. It's straight down. All of the park to the north, east, and south is spread out beneath, and the huge domes of Zion Canyon itself are clearly visible 10 miles away to the southeast. Shortly before the point, a rougher track leads to the Wildcat Trailhead, from which various cross-country slopes begin, including the hike to the deep and watery Slot Canyon of Kolob Creek. And now we find the road construction. They're actually painting the road. And this gentleman comes and fills us in. It's going to be at least 15 minutes or more before the guide car makes it back. He just left. We talked a little bit about going up to the reservoir. It's fairly flat going up to the reservoir. And once you get up there, the road becomes unpaved and doesn't go in. It'll keep going, but it's nothing we wanted to attack on this particular day. So we thought it was a good time to turn around and head back down. A very wise man once said, be sure to turn and look around as you're going back up through any sort of drive. And so we thought on the way back down, we would slow this down and give you a little better view of what we were actually seeing. This speed will give you a better appreciation of that 90-degree turn down at the bottom. give you a little information on some of the trails. The West Rim Trail is 14.5 miles long, 3,600 feet in elevation. It's the longest trail in the national park, linking Lava Point with the canyon floor of Zion. That was the one that was back up at the top of the hill. North Peaks Trail is 2 miles long, 100 feet in elevation. It's a path across flat, partly wooded land to a viewpoint between two rounded peaks. The summits are reachable by unofficial continuation of trails. We just passed that. North Creek on the left fork is 3.4 miles long, 1,200 feet in elevation. It's a popular, oft-visited narrow canyon that includes the subway, where the creek flows through a long tubular passage with only a narrow opening above. We truly hope you enjoy this trip up Kolob Reservoir Road. We thought it was pretty spectacular and a nice treat compared to what we saw when we went through Zion itself. We highly recommend take this drive, and you can spend lots of time anywhere in and around this area. There are places to camp down below, and you could actually do BLM land up in here or go to some of the glamping sites. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share, and we will see you around the bend.